Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. We are doing another reading wrap up. And I did one of these not too long ago, but two things have been happening. One, I had filmed that wrap up a little bit in advance because I was starting to forget about the books. I needed to film it, but other videos needed to come out first. And secondly, I have just been reading a lot. So I have another, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books to tell you about today. And we're gonna get into them. So like usual, we're gonna save the books that have already come out in videos, mainly vlogs, for the end. And I'll talk about the books that I have not covered on the channel yet first, which is most of them. I've been doing a lot of just mood reading on the side, not for videos. So first off, and honestly, a lot of these are new releases. The bulk of these are new releases. First one, we have The Pilgrimage. This is by John Broderick, and it's published by McNally Editions. There is a foreword by Colm Toybeen in this. If that titillates you, then know that it is there. If you know McNally Editions, you know that they republish books that have previously gone out of print. This one was an Irish book that was banned back in the 60s. I believe this was published in like 61. Yes, published in 1961, banned in Ireland. And that's really because this has a lot to do with female desire. We are following our main female protagonist who is in a relationship with a queer man. And she is very persistently trying to find a fulfilling sexual partner for herself because her husband cannot fulfill that role in her life. And the small tagline on the back I think sums this up very well, which is an erotic nightmare of Catholic longing, guilt, and desire. That is definitely the case. Our protagonist is not likable. I want to be very clear about that going in. She's not likable at all. Most of the characters are not in this, and the community in which our protagonist and her husband live is very Catholic. They are the wealthiest people in their town, so they do have a safety in their class status that protects them from some of the gossip about her husband being queer and about their reluctance to engage socially, maybe to the degree that they really should as a prominent couple in the town. I get why it was banned. I get why it was brought back. It was a very contained piece around what it might be like to be in this situation at the time. I don't think it's trying to do anything like experimental or inventive, but it is a great snapshot of trying to navigate these things that you couldn't talk about in society behind closed doors, and how complicated that makes everything, all these lies that you have to try and remember. It was also a slog, which it's meant to be a slog because you're meant to feel bogged down in the weight of all of the lies and all of the performance that you have to put on. So this was really fascinating, and I'm glad I read it. If that sounds interesting to you, definitely try and pick it up. So that is The Pilgrimage. Next up, we have another new release that I was really excited about, and that is The National Telepathy by Roque Larraquy, and it's translated by Wynne. This is published by Charco Press. You can tell they're lovely, unique editions. And I was so excited about this book, let me tell you, and I was disappointed. I'm sad to say I was disappointed. And mainly for me, it's just the writing style, but even more than that, the choice of content. So the premise of this is an ethnographic theme park, which is based on a real thing, by the way. We have a collection of wealthy businessmen. They decide that they are going to pool a bunch of money together to invest in this ethnographic theme park. They start purchasing native peoples from other cultures and shipping them in. In one of the most recent shipments, there is included this crate that contains a sloth inside of it. We find out that this sloth, from the blurb, and you find out in the book, that it has magical powers, essentially, to create a telekinetic connection between two people that has an erotically charged element to it. That is the blurb. And technically that does happen in the book, but the scenes that the author chose to write about with that premise, I just don't understand the choices there. And that's really what I have an issue with about the novel. It is much more like heavily in the perspective of these men who kind of like fuck it all up in the end. And the part that's really intriguing about the premise, like telekinetic connection, I feel like is really unexplored. You get bits of it, but it's sort of just like a fact by fact retelling of what happens. And I wanted it to be so much more richly explored and developed, and just felt it lackluster and devoid of heart, which I could see that being an intentional choice on the author's part, but it's just not a book that I resonated with for that reason. So disappointed in this one. I am going to be passing it along to another home that hopefully likes it better. But yeah, a little bit of a bust for me on the National Telepathy, which is so sad because it was one of my top premises of the year that I was excited about. And those have been slightly disappointing for me this year. Mending Bodies was another one in my last wrap up that I was so excited about and did not live up to the hype for me. But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to the books that I read more recently. Next up, we have a poetry collection that I purchased this year on Independent Bookstore Day. This is A History of Half-Birds by Caroline Harper New, and it's published by Milkweed Editions. I really enjoyed this. I thought this collection was great. This collection does not have a blurb. The inside flap is just a portion of one of the poems, which is what I read when I saw it at the bookstore and made me want to purchase it. And this is a lovely signed edition as well, so I'm happy to have it in my hands. This collection all takes place in the Gulf Coast, and there is a lot of imagery around that landscape, and I loved that. I thought she did such a good job describing it, and you could feel the amount of like reverence and complex love that she had for the place, and I think that was really like the shining star in this collection. There's a lot about the natural world and sort of this blending of being human and being an animal. Lots of interesting stuff going on in here. So if you think any of that sounds like it could be up your street, try picking it up. I'll read you just a section of that inside flap so you can get a taste of the poetry. Raise your ankles, my mother warned, as she pushed me into the thousands of stingrays fleeing south. Wings of cartilage thumped my bright yellow tube like a timpani. The thinnest membrane holds a body out of reach. Children who learn to shuffle their feet when entering high tide are left unsure of how to float and why the Yucatan calls the stingrays home. That's just a taste. I didn't even read the whole inside flap, but lovely, lovely, lovely. It's very lyrical writing and thoroughly enjoyed it. So happy to have it. Definitely a win for me. And then we have another one. We're getting into the string of wins. I had some really great books in this little chapter of my life. I read Astonishing the Gods by Ben Okri. This is published by Other Press. Oh my God, this was so good. I had mentioned multiple times that I really wanted to pick up another Ben Okri because I read Madame Sosostris and the Festival for the Brokenhearted earlier in the year and really loved it. His writing was so beautiful, and I was hoping that was not a one-hit wonder, and it is not. This is equally beautiful and has a similar genre in this like speculative, very otherworldly, ethereal type of setting that has fantastical elements, but the writing is so lyrical, so beautiful. It is, for me, right at the edge of being too didactic. It does not cross it for me, but we're right at the edge. This is the furthest that I like going. This one, we're following a man who believes he is invisible because of his race. And he goes off adventuring, finds himself on this island that has many lessons for him to learn. And lots of speculative things happen to him while he's there. He has to learn to cross a bridge that doesn't exist. And one moment it's made out of fire, and one moment it's made out of wind. All this type of like kind of crazy stuff that's going on, but it's so beautiful. Let me read you the beginning of the passage. So book one, this is in many, many books that get most of the time shorter as you go on throughout the novel. So book one. It is better to be invisible. His life was better when he was invisible, but he didn't know it at the time. He was born invisible. His mother was invisible too, and that was why she could see him. His people lived contented lives, working on the farms under the familiar sunlight. And we go from there. And you can see like the storybook, fairy tale like nature of his writing. We get that like short sentence, long sentence, really flowy, really like clipped pace. It's really nice writing. It's really nice writing. So that is Astonishing the Gods by Ben Okri. Definitely a new favorite author for me, and I'm so excited that he is very prolific and has many, many books for me to go and read. So love that one. Then another one that I loved, that was sort of a sleeper hit. I got this book while my husband took me book shopping after I had a couple glasses of wine, and I am, much more open-minded to bringing a book home that was not on my original list when I've had a glass of wine. And I picked up Beta Vulgaris. He actually brought this over to me because he really liked the cover, and then I read the premise and thought, yeah, let's do it. And oh my gosh, I loved this, but it is extremely difficult to read, so I just want to put that out there beforehand. So this is by Margie Sarsfield, and it's published by Norton. And side note here, side tangent, if you are wanting to get more into independent press literature, but you're a little bit concerned about some of these smaller presses that sometimes I show that only have, 10 or so books that they publish in a year, and you're worried about what's the likelihood of me liking one of those like niche 10 books, you should try Norton. They are a massive independent publisher. They publish such a wide variety of things, from things that will have more commercial appeal to less commercial, more niche appeal. So I would really recommend starting there if you're wanting to get into small press literature. So side note over, back to this book. We are following our main character. What is her name? Oh, I blacked out her name because this was trippy while I was reading it. Her name is Elise, which, is my name. So strange to read a protagonist with the same name. And Elise and her partner, what's her partner's name? Tom, are setting off for Minnesota because they are going to do a summer in the beet harvest in order to make some cash all at once. And really important central component of this book is that Elise is very poor, and her boyfriend Tom comes from a very wealthy family, but he has chosen to not engage with taking his money from his family and wants to kind of make it on his own. Whereas Elise is struggling to cover basic needs for herself. She is in credit card debt that she's very ashamed of, and she's keeping a secret from Tom. And she also resents Tom for having access to all this money that could be life-changing for her, and yet he refuses to use it and is resentful that he gets to make that choice in the first place. Now, Elise is extremely anxious, and she has an eating disorder. That is the other huge component of this that I would put a content warning out for. There are many content warnings in this book, so please do look all of them up before you get into it. But as true to life, the eating disorder takes up almost every page of this book because she constantly thinks about it, which is what happens when you have an eating disorder. Your mind cannot not focus on food and eating and weight and everything that means. So you are getting frequently throughout this novel the calorie counts in food items. And again, this is so true to having an eating disorder. So we enter into them kind of driving to the beet harvest. You know that something is off with the beet harvest. I think it tells you this in the blurb that there's something surreal going on. It mentions the word surreal in the blurb. And there is something off kilter, and people start vanishing from the beet harvest, which they're sort of told early on by the workers at the beet harvest that that's normal, right? We're gonna lose people along the way. They're not cut out for the work. To sort of prime them, groom them into feeling like it's normal that people are disappearing. So that's going on, and there's a big mystery around that. While Elise and Tom's relationship is very fraught with each other. So we're getting a lot of relationship dynamics between the two of them. Again, there's so many interesting things going on with this book, and I really loved it. I loved the voice of the main character. I thought it was so singular, and she felt so real to herself as a character and the world that the author had constructed. I love taking on themes of class. I love when books talk about disordered eating in a realistic way. All of those things really just made this for me, but I do want to stress this is very dark. It's very dark and has a lot of content warnings, some of which I did not mention yet. If you're looking for just like kind of an insane take on some of these themes that is still really well done, I would highly recommend. Let me just read you the beginning of this, because why not? I've been reading the beginning of lots of stuff. So we start out, oh, this is right. Okay, the other element of this is there is this pamphlet going around sugar beets. So it is a sugar beet harvest, which is different from a normal beet harvest because sugar beets are not meant to be consumed. They're meant to be rendered down for sugar. So they have a really high sugar content. So there's this pamphlet going around and you get sections from the pamphlet. And we start off with a pamphlet entry, which is, you are a sugar beet. You've spent months becoming, pushing yourself free of hard shell, snaking your newborn fibers through the soil, sprouting leaves, amassing, absorbing, aliving yourself into something fat and bulbous and full of candied potential. You are already a survivor. You are not consumed by sugar beet maggots. You do not succumb to root madness. All that good, hard, organic work just to wind up dead and frosted over on concrete. Not even any dirt beneath you to remind you of home. Ah, it's so good. It's so good. Really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed it. I've blushed about it enough, clearly. I'm gonna have to cut out some of what I just said about it because I was talking way too long about it. Then we have two books that I read from the library, so I do not own, so I'll put the picture up. First one being School of Shards by Marina and Sergey Dyachenko. This is the third book in the Vita Nostra series, and it is published by Harper Voyager in the US. This is the final installment in the Vita Nostra series, a series that I have thoroughly loved. This one was good. I still don't think it lives up to the first one. Vita Nostra is, as many people talk about on BookTube, a spectacular novel. It is so interesting and original and well written. And this one doesn't quite stand up to that, but I do think it's a solid entry. I do think I like it slightly more than the second book. I can't tell you what this book is about because it would spoil if you haven't read before. But vaguely, what I liked about this book is this is the book where you get the most actual information, concrete information about the magic system. The magic system in these books are notoriously confusing by design. They're meant to be confusing because it's meant to put you in the perspective of the students who are confused by the magic because they're not prepared, their minds and bodies are not prepared to fully understand it when they first come into the school. So this one, you get the most concrete information about the magic system. It really comes full circle and it's really fascinating. And it is unlike any magic system I have ever read about or have heard about even being in a fantasy book. Truly, truly original, and I loved it. The thing that I didn't like as much about this one is it is not as mean-spirited as Vita Nostra, and I think it loses a little bit of its magic when it's not mean. That is also part of like Vita Nostra being original. It's like, it is dark. They are forcing children to go to the school and do things and study against their will under threat of killing their family members. That is the premise of it. And this book, they're a little bit nicer on the students. And I think it really needs to be that dark in order to like feel that oppressive nature of the school. And I feel like I know why the authors didn't do it, because there are some characters that I think they want you to like, and having them be brutal, I think, you know, would change how we feel about them, but I think they needed to be brutal. So if you have read this, you let me know what you thought about it, but definitely a solid entry into the series, and would highly recommend this series if you have not read it before, especially that first book. It is so phenomenal. So that is School of Shards. Oh, and I'm sorry, the translator for that novel is Maria Hersey Smith. Maria Hersey Smith. I'll put it down below if that's not correct. So yeah, enjoyed. And then lastly, the book I read recently was Whites, the short story collection by Mark Doten, published by Grey Wolf Press. This is another one of my anticipated releases. And this one also, sadly, was mildly disappointing. I still think it's good. It wasn't like a pure disappointment. I still think it's good, but this collection, oh my God. So it is making fun of the more insane aspects of white culture. And it is satirical. One of my main issues with this book is very now. Like, if you don't read this book in the next year, it will be irrelevant. So you need to read this now if you're going to read it at all. And in some ways, I sort of respect that type of like flash in the pan literature. But I do think even me reading it now, which it just came out in August, I think, even now, some of the things already felt slightly dated to me. But this is like truly crazy. So it's talking a lot about COVID, all the varying views on COVID, and really just like this pure ignorance around COVID and like people who are wanting to deny science. This might be the first story where they're we're following an event planner who is trying to like put on the first event after lockdown has happened, and they're still getting a level of pushback, and they end up doing something, I think in their mind, maybe like a faux pas or making a small mistake, but to other people is like a very serious, like assault basically on another person, and they get canceled. And they're sort of recounting how they got canceled in the first place and what their like life is like after being canceled. There is a story called Jan Sixers, and we're in the head of someone who participated in that and then went to jail because of it. So that is the type of vibe that is happening in this book. Again, highly satirical, so you need to be prepared for that. And is really showing like the extremes on both ends and just how fucked things have been and can be. So, you know, trigger warnings for that in a different way. But yeah, I thought this was just okay. It was more absurd and really leaning into the satire than I originally thought. And again, so niche that I don't think this is going to be relevant in a year's time. So that was Whites. Now we're going to go over the 3 books that came out in a vlog. So I had a vlog come out of reading books my mother-in-law sent me, and there were 3 books included in that. Technically I tried 4, one I DNF'd. The first one I read was Reckless Girls by Paula Hawkins. This one is published by St. Martin's Press. This is a thriller that is supposed to be an And Then There Were None retelling. It's a very loose interpretation of And Then There Were None, but it takes place on an island. A girl and her boyfriend, in very beta Vulgaris fashion, she is poor, he comes from a very wealthy family, but he doesn't want to take their money. They have a sailboat and get hired by these 2 girls who want to go to this really secluded island, and they're willing to pay them well, also pay for some repairs on their boat so they can take them out there for a week or so. So the 4 of them go out together. While they're at the island, there is another boat there with a different couple, and we sort of get shenanigans and craziness from there. Lots of secrets, lots of messiness. It was okay. It was okay. It will be leaving my household, but I'm not like mad that I read it or anything like that. Then I attempted to read, what is that called? All the Colors in the Dark by Chris Whitaker. DNF'd it. It's a no for me, dog. So instead, because that one's more of like a mystery, a historical mystery love story thing, I went to a different kind of like slower paced mystery-ish thriller that my mother-in-law sent me, and that is The Blue Hour by Paula Hawkins. This one is published by Marina Books, and this one is about an artist who has since passed away but has bequeathed all of her art to this wealthy family. One of our main protagonists that we're following, what's his name? I can't remember his name. He's like the family's art curator dude. He gets a call at the very beginning of this novel saying that one of the exhibitions that is out and about in London has had to be taken off of the floor because there is a human bone in one of the sculptural pieces. And then we get thrown into this mystery around whose bone is this? And based on whose bone it is, does that have wider implications for the artist? So that's the mystery going on here. We also have another main character named Grace, who was best friends, very close with the artist while she was still alive. And Grace still lives on the property that the artist was living on at the time of her death. And that is the location in which she created a lot of her art. Also the location in which she would scavenge for a lot of animal bones for her sculptural work. So we're getting the curator guy and Grace's kind of real-time conversations and then some like flashbacks as well. Again, I thought this was like solid. I would read from Paula Hawkins again. This is my second Paula Hawkins. She definitely does like that slower paced mystery stuff. The character work in here I thought was well done, if predictable, but I could see like the writing talent that she has. And I do think the end of this was really well done, and that solidified it for me as a good book. So yeah, enjoyed this. That is The Blue Hour. It will probably also be leaving my home to go on to a better home, but I did enjoy it. And then the one that I like the best that I will be keeping is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is published by Berkeley, or at least, yeah, it's published by Berkeley. And this is my third Emily Henry now, and is by far my favorite. I really enjoyed this one. We're following a literary agent and a book editor who sort of have like a meet-hate. They have a run-in with each other early on, like a professional run-in, and they really don't like each other. And then they end up working for the same company later and ultimately working on the same project. And, you know, they fall in love from there. I really enjoy this because, especially in the first half of the book, it's being very on the nose, very aware of a lot of romance tropes, and that cut out some of the cheesiness for me. The cheesiness did start coming in the back half of the novel as it sort of needed to engage in some of the tropes that a romance novel would, but I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a slightly different take on heroine hero setup. They're not as stereotypical as the average ones in terms of the ways that they view relationships and what they're looking from a relationship, and I enjoyed that. And I thought the chemistry was written well, the sex scenes were written well, so yeah, really enjoyed this. Would definitely be, like, contemporary romance wise, one of my favorites that I've ever read. So that is Book Lovers. All right, we made it. We made it. Please let me know if you have read any of these books, and if you did, what you thought about them. And also let me know if you're interested in reading any of these now that we have discussed. And while you're at it, while you're down in the comments below, throw in there what you have been loving lately. And I'd love to know, and I'd love to chat about it. So we will leave it there, and I will talk to you all in the next video.